Breaking news out of the Middle East. We just got our hands on this new video. Iran, last hour, launching its first missile attacks on Israel since the April ceasefire. 4 waves of ballistic missiles launched in response, apparently, to an Israeli strike against Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. Israel says all of the missiles were intercepted. Let's bring in Brent Sadler, retired U.S. Navy captain and former Pentagon official. Brett, Hezbollah generally doesn't make a move without Iran's say-so, right? So Iran must have been anticipating that Israel would launch strikes against Hezbollah.
Yeah, I think the trigger for this round of attacks is the attack in the Beirut's out suburbs. Apparently, the Israelis got their man and triggered this response. I mean, this should not be a surprise if they've got a senior member of the IRGC in their crosshairs. We saw this play out in April of 2024 when Iran launched hundreds of missiles at Israel when they targeted and killed 7 senior IRGC members in Damascus, Syria.
So what should the president's response be? I mean, we're kind of waiting to see what President Trump will do. He told our Trey Yinks that he wants the Iranians. He acknowledges that they've launched their missiles. He wants them to shut it down and get back to the bargaining table. First of all, do you think they will? And secondly, if they don't, what should the president do?
Well, I think part of it is what will the Israelis do? Will the Israelis who have held back on resuming attacks against Iran proper, will they resume those attacks against the IRGC like we saw before the ceasefire that went into effect back in April 8th? They don't necessarily need U.S. support for that. They could do targeted attacks themselves. But I think this also could be a moment where, with a show of force from the U.S. and Israel, that might actually move the negotiations forward, not backwards. But it's going to require a forceful military response to get to that.
Well, the president has said he was not pleased when Israel launched those attacks on Hezbollah. If Israel were to launch another round of attacks on Iran, you know, I don't want to get inside or get ahead of the president, but it would seem like he would not be wanting that kind of thing either.
Well, it all comes down to how to approach the negotiations. And if the channels of communication are healthy between D.C. and Jerusalem, I think that, you know, don't take anything off the table. That's one thing that we know about President Trump. If he sees a way ahead, an opportunity, he'll seize it to drive the America First agenda forward. So I wouldn't take it off the table. I don't necessarily, from what we know of the attack earlier today by the Israelis in the suburbs of Beirut, it seems to be targeted, a very small strike, targeting certain individuals. So certainly not the wider assault that the Israelis were planning into the suburbs of Beirut that they did pause at the behest of President Trump. So it doesn't appear on the surface that the Israelis crossed a red line from Washington, D.C.
The president has said he expects that maybe, tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, that the Iranians might be inclined to sign some kind of a deal. Launching ballistic missiles at Israel doesn't suggest that they are tiptoeing toward the signature line.
Well, a unified and strong response to the Iranians at this stage, I think, makes it more likely they'll actually make the necessary concessions and sign a deal. But if we do try to equivocate, then it could be just another opportunity for the Iranians to string things along. Again, the Iranians have made an attack. It's not a very substantial one when you look at what they've done in the recent past. Dozens of missiles versus hundreds of missiles, uncoordinated with drone strikes. So their command and control and the capacity for the IRGC to launch these strikes is also being demonstrably weak. So it also exposes the weakness of the military hand that the Iranians have. It makes it, again, best interest for all parties that they end the fighting.
We just played a piece of sound from Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House of Representatives, a Democrat, who says that he believes that Iran is actually stronger now than they were before hostilities began. It sounds like you would disagree with that.
Yes, I'm not sure what lens or historical or military lens that he's looking through to make such an assessment, because it's certainly not the one that I think most of the folks in military experience would assess. A Navy that's now on the bottom of the Persian Gulf, an Air Force that's non-existent. It clearly demonstrated with these attacks today, not a very robust missile force. And certainly their command and control is questionable, because if they did launch drones in coordination with these ballistic missile strikes, as they've done in the Straits of Hormuz, it's just not been very well coordinated for any military effect. So by all accounts, the Iranian military hand is significantly degraded.
And as our Trey Yingst reported, the Israelis say they shot down all of the ballistic missiles that were launched toward Israel. Retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.